If you've ever been cruising down I-70 east of Denver heading out of the city toward Aurora, you've probably done a double take at those massive white domes poking up over the suburbs, like somebody plopped a bunch of oversized golf balls right in the middle of strip malls and housing developments. Locals call them the golf balls, and yeah, from a distance they look kind of goofy, almost like Epcot Center crashed into Colorado. But these aren't some quirky landmark or alien landing pads, even though half the folks around here swear that's what they are. These are radomes, huge hardened shells protecting some of the most critical gear in America's defense arsenal. And inside, giant satellite dishes that are literally the first line of defense if somebody anywhere on the planet decides to light off a ballistic missile aimed our way. Buckley Space Force Base in Aurora runs the show here, and they've got over a dozen of these radomes spread out across the installation. Most were built in the late 60s and early 70s by, wait for it, Ford Aerospace. Yeah, the same Ford that was cranking out Mustangs and F-150s also built these beasts. Because back then, the defense contractors pulled from whoever had the engineering chops. Each dome is over 100 feet tall, pieced together from hundreds of fiberglass panels that can shrug off Colorado's nasty hail, high winds, and blizzards. But the real genius is that the shell is radio transparent. The signals zip right through, so the dish inside can talk to satellites 22,000 miles up without skipping a beat. And from the outside, or from enemy spy satellites, you can't tell which direction the antenna is pointing. Operational security baked right in.
Step inside one of these things, though, and it's a whole different world. The door seals behind you with a heavy thud, and there it is, a massive parabolic dish nicknamed Fred by the crew, complete with a hand-painted name tape that looks suspiciously like the old Ford logo. This isn't some static sculpture. It's constantly moving, tilting, and slewing to stay locked on its assigned geostationary satellite as the Earth rotates underneath. Think about that precision. You're tracking a target the size of a bus that's screaming along at 7,000 miles an hour, 22,000 miles away, with tolerances measured in fractions of a degree. One tiny drift, and you lose the data link. These old Ford-built antennas are mechanical monsters, hydraulic motors, huge gears, the works. And the maintenance crews treat them like classic muscle cars. Daily checks, oil changes on the azimuth and elevation drives, listening for that telltale squeak before it turns into a major headache.
But why Colorado? Simple. When they picked the sites in the early 70s, the Eastern Plains were wide open nothing. No buildings, no interference, perfect line of sight to the equator where geobirds park. Then Denver boomed outward, suburbs swallowed the prairie, and now these things sit smack in the middle of everyday America. Redundancy is key too. Multiple antennas covering different satellites, different orbits, so if one goes down for maintenance or gets jammed, others pick up the load without missing a beat. Now zoom out and look at the big picture. America's missile warning network is a three-layered beast that's been evolving since the Cold War, and it's scarily good at its job.
Layer 1, the eyes in the sky. We're talking the Defense Support Program, DSP satellites, that have been up there since the 1970s, and their modern replacements, the Space-Based Infrared System, or SBIRS. These birds sit in geostationary orbit, staring down at the Earth with infrared telescopes, so sensitive they can spot the heat bloom of a missile engine the instant it ignites, even through clouds, even at night, even if it's a Scud launch from some desert in the Middle East or a hypersonic test off China. The old DSP birds could give you about 20 to 30 seconds of warning on an ICBM launch from Russia. SBIRS? Way better. Faster scanning, staring sensors that track the missile through boost phase, mid-course, and even into terminal. Plus, they can cue ground radars early.
Layer 2, the big ground radars out in the middle of nowhere. Think the upgraded early warning radars at Clear in Alaska, Thule in Greenland, Fylingdales in the UK, and the PavePause sites on both coasts.
These are phased array monsters the size of apartment buildings that can track hundreds of objects at once out to thousands of miles. Once the satellites scream, "Launch detected," these radars take over for precision tracking, figuring out exactly how fast it's going, where it's headed, and whether it's a real threat or just a space rocket. Layer 3, bringing it all home. The radomes and the operations floor at Buckley and a few other sites. The satellites beam their raw data down to these ground antennas, which relay it in real time to the crew. No delays, no single points of failure. It's all fused together in seconds.
Walk onto the actual ops floor at Buckley Space Force Base and you feel the weight of it. Cameras are almost never allowed in here. Everything's classified up the wazoo. But on the day they let a crew in, the tension is palpable even during a training run. Rows of consoles, giant screens showing orbital tracks and infrared hits, red phones that go straight to NORAD, STRATCOM, and yeah, if it gets bad enough, straight to the White House Situation Room. The crew is young, mostly 20-something Guardians who sit 24/7 alert shifts. You've got the crew commander running the show like a quarterback in the fourth quarter, cyber troops watching for hacks or jamming attempts because Russia, China, everybody is trying to blind these systems, intel officers piecing together the bigger picture from classified sources.
When something pops, it's 3 steps: detect, verify, disseminate. Detection is automatic. The satellites see the plume and scream. But nothing gets sent up the chain until 2 separate human beings look at the same data and agree, yeah, that's a real missile, not a forced fire or a false alarm. That's the 2-person rule. No single point of failure, no accidental Armageddon. Then dissemination. In under a minute, warnings blast out to combatant commands, allies, Navy destroyers with Aegis, Patriot batteries overseas, even civilian alerts if it's heading for the homeland. In real life, these exact crews were the first to call out Iran's massive barrage in June 2025 during that 12-day flare-up of Israel, and they tracked every single one of the retaliatory strikes after US B-2s hit Iranian nuclear facilities. Hundreds of missiles and drones, more in a single day than anyone had seen in decades. And Buckley's Guardians gave forces on the ground the precious minutes they needed to intercept or hunker down.
The craziest part? Most Americans drive past these golf balls every single day and have zero clue that inside, a couple dozen kids in uniform are quietly making sure the country gets that critical 15 to 30-minute heads up before hell rains down. No drama, no headlines, unless something actually happens. They train like it's real, because one day it will be. Next time you're grabbing coffee in Aurora and spot those white domes on the horizon, tip your hat. Somewhere under one of them, a dish named Fred is spinning. A satellite 22,000 miles up is staring at the planet with unblinking infrared eyes, and a crew of Space Force Guardians is wide awake, keeping the ultimate watch. This is how America knows, before anyone else on Earth, when somebody pulls the trigger. And honestly, in a world full of hypersonics, rogue states, and great power competition, it's one of the few things that still gives us the edge.